My husband was straightening his silk tie in the reflection of a hospital vending machine, practicing the face he planned to wear at my funeral. Not a tear, not even the tremble of a lip, just a calibrated softening around the eyes, a slight downward pull at the corners of his mouth, the expression of a man who wanted strangers to believe he had loved deeply and lost unfairly. The fluorescent lights made his skin look clean and expensive. The chrome edge of the machine split him into two images, one Darius Cole looking down at his own hands, the other looking up at a future without me. He thought I couldn't see him. He thought the morphine drip had turned my thoughts to mush and my memories to fog. He thought my body was here, but my mind had already drifted off, obedient and quiet, like a wife who finally stopped asking questions. But my eyes were open, not wide, not dramatic, just barely cracked, lashes heavy, gaze fixed on the narrow glass window in my ICU door. In that window, I could see the vending machine across the hall, and the man I married 10 years ago adjusting his tie like this was a boardroom and not the edge of my life. The monitor beside my bed beeped in patient little clicks. My IV line ticked with slow, cold purpose. Every push of air from the ventilator pressed pain through my ribs. I tasted metal at the back of my throat. And still, my memory held. When I woke, I tested my mind first. I replayed my own name, my mother's voice, the last argument with Darius. The details stayed. That was how I knew I wasn't gone. Darius leaned closer to the vending machine's glass, smoothing his tie knot again. Gray silk with a faint diagonal pattern, the kind he saved for important days. Charcoal suit, polished shoes, a watch that cost more than my first car. He looked like a man who believed the world bent for him if he spoke in the right tone. He lifted his chin, practiced the widower face again, then he smiled at himself. A quick, satisfied flash, like he'd nailed the part. My stomach turned. The morphine tried to float that feeling away, but it couldn't. It was too real, too personal. A shadow moved near the corner of my room. Not a nurse, not a doctor. This shadow was still, deliberate, like someone trained to wait. He stood just inside the dim, behind the curtain line, where the ceiling cameras wouldn't catch his face unless you knew where to look. Malcolm Pierce. He didn't wear a white coat. He wore a dark suit without a tie, collar open, the kind of outfit that said he could blend into a courtroom or disappear into a crowd. His hands were in his pockets. His eyes were on Darius, not on me. He hadn't come to ask me about my wishes. He hadn't come with forms and solemn questions about who should inherit what. He was here for an inheritance fraud investigation. I knew that because he'd told me, in a whisper, the moment my eyes first opened. "Don't react," Malcolm had said, voice low enough to ride the hum of machines. "If he knows you're awake, he'll change the plan." Plan. That word landed like a nail. I had always believed Darius was reckless, selfish, hungry. I hadn't wanted to believe he was the kind of man who could stand in a hospital hallway and plan my death like a project timeline. Across the hall, Darius rolled his shoulders, rehearsing something else now. Not grief, a speech. I watched his lips move without sound. If I listened carefully, I could catch fragments when he leaned closer to the glass. So sudden, loved her, prayers. He wasn't practicing for family. He was practicing for strangers. He reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a folded paper, then smoothed it against his palm. Even from this distance, I recognized the header. Mercy Harbor Medical. The hospital logo in blue. The form every family fears. Do not resuscitate. A DNR order that was not mine. A forged DNR order that fit into his pocket like a golden ticket. He glanced toward my door, checking whether anyone was watching, and then tucked it away again. He turned his body slightly, shielding the movement from the security camera above the vending machines. He knew angles. He knew blind spots. He knew how to make a lie look routine. Medical power of attorney abuse doesn't look like a crime at first. It looks like a husband with a pen. It looks like a man who says, "I'm just trying to honor her wishes." It looks like a signature placed where a wife can't lift her hand to stop it. I had signed those papers years ago, back when I still believed in the us Darius sold to the world, back when he kissed my forehead and told me I worried too much, back when he said, "If anything ever happens, I'll take care of you." He had meant it, just not the way I thought. Malcolm's gaze flicked to my face, checking for movement. I kept my expression slack. I let my mouth fall open the way the ventilator wanted. I let my eyes glaze just enough to look vacant. I hated myself for how good I was at playing weak. I'd spent too many years doing it at home. Malcolm shifted closer, shoes silent on the waxed floor. He leaned in as if checking my pulse, then spoke into the space near my ear. "He's been calling billing," he murmured. "Asking about your life insurance. Asking who can access your records. He tried to request a copy of your medical power of attorney." My throat tightened. I couldn't speak, not yet. The ventilator owned my voice, so I blinked once, our signal that I heard him, that I understood. "He also tried to push an emergency update to your chart," Malcolm said. "A DNR that reflects your wishes. It doesn't. It reflects his." Heat climbed my neck, furious and useless. I had been the kind of woman who kept receipts and read fine print. And still, the most dangerous document in my life had been signed in a season when love made me careless. Across the hall, Darius moved from the vending machine to the row of chairs along the wall. He sat like he belonged there, legs crossed, phone in hand. He scrolled with the calm focus of a man ordering dinner. Every few seconds, his face shifted. Concern, sorrow, gratitude, like he was selecting filters. Darius lifted his phone and angled it toward himself. He took a photo. Not of me, not of the ICU door, just his own face, lit by hospital fluorescence, the perfect shade of devastated. Then he typed. His thumbs moved fast. My pulse picked up. I wanted to rip the tube from my throat, run into the hall, slap the phone out of his hand, and scream, "I'm not dead!" But Malcolm's hand pressed lightly against my wrist, a reminder. Not yet. The trap didn't work if the bait jumped early. Darius's phone buzzed. He smiled faintly, then forced the widower face back into place. He typed some more. He hit post. And just like that, my husband became a widow online. A fake widow fundraiser scam thrives on timing, on confusion, on sympathy, on the reflex that tells people to help before they ask questions. Darius understood that. He understood how to sound like a victim while holding the knife. Malcolm's phone buzzed a second later. He glanced at the screen, then looked at me, eyes hard. "He posted," Malcolm said. "He wrote that you lost your battle. He's asking for prayers, for privacy, for donations. Donations, as if my body were already a closed account." Malcolm leaned closer, voice careful. "He believes you won't survive the night," he said. "And he believes that if you don't, he can move fast." Move fast. That was the part people didn't see. Grief takes time. Paperwork doesn't. Malcolm's eyes flicked toward the nurse's station. "He's not alone," he added. My gaze followed his, as much as my neck brace allowed. A young woman stood there, pretending to read a pamphlet about cardiac rehab. Too polished for this floor. Dark hair in a sleek ponytail. A cream trench coat that didn't belong in a hospital. Her posture said she expected doors to open. When she looked up, I saw the quick flash of green in her eyes. Strange, bright, almost glassy. She glanced toward Darius with something like instruction, then back down, as if she hadn't just directed his next move. "Who is that?" Malcolm asked. "Naomi Fields," he said softly. "Junior analyst at Cole Strategic. 26. 26. The number hit me like a cold hand. My mind pulled up a memory I had spent decades sealing behind polite smiles. Snow outside a hospital window, my teenage hands shaking as I counted 10 tiny fingers and knew I was about to lose them. The monitor answered with a quickened beep, eager to tell on me. I forced my breathing steady. I forced my face back into blankness. Malcolm watched Naomi for another beat, then leaned closer. "I need you to hear me," he whispered. Your husband's workplace affair exposed is only the surface. He's using her, and she may be connected to you in a way that makes his plan uglier. I blinked again, not as signal, but because tears pressed behind my eyes like pressure behind a dam. I can't prove it yet, Malcolm said. But I'm seeing signs that there's going to be a DNA test reunion twist in this story. He didn't just find someone young, he found someone useful. Useful, that was the word Darius lived by. Useful investments, useful connections, useful wives. Across the hall, Darius stood, slipped his phone into his pocket, and adjusted his tie one more time. He glanced toward my door, and for a second, I thought he could see through the glass. I know things, through the machines, through my barely open eyes. He smiled. Then he walked toward the nurse's station with the confidence of a man who believed paperwork could kill better than a gun. Naomi turned slightly, making space for him, like they were rehearsed partners on a stage. Malcolm stepped back into the shadows again. He looked like a suit and a silence. Only his voice reached me, thin as wire. Stay still, he said. Let him think you're gone. Let him show us exactly how far he'll go. The monitor beeped. The ventilator breathed. The hall lights hummed. And my husband reached into his pocket as he approached the desk. I lay still, listening to his shoes. If you're watching this right now, don't look away. Tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. And if you can, tap that like button, just once, because the next 10 minutes will show you what a man will do when he thinks love is a loophole and death is a signature. Comment your city and the time you're watching. And stay with me. The most dangerous part of my story hasn't even happened yet. In the hours before Darius tried to turn my heart monitor into a countdown clock, my life had been painfully ordinary. That's the part people miss about betrayal. It doesn't announce itself with thunder. It arrives in routines you trust, the grocery list taped to the fridge, the lint you pick off a jacket before work, the way you keep one side of the bed warm for a man who keeps finding reasons to stay late. My name is Aaliyah Carter. I'm 45, and for most of my adult life, I made my living turning other people's pain into clean lines of text. Medical transcription. I listened to surgeons describe incisions like they were paragraphs. I typed out diagnoses the way other women wrote birthday cards. The body tells the truth, even when people don't. Darius didn't like that about me. He liked my patience, my ability to smooth a rough day into something tolerable. But he never liked my attention to detail. He called it worry. He called it small thinking. He said it the way a man says a woman is too sensitive, which really means she notices too much. We lived in Baltimore, not the postcard version with tourist boats and shiny restaurants, but the working city. Row houses with tired porches, cracked sidewalks, the harbor smell on damp days. Our apartment sat above a laundromat, close enough to the street that bus brakes hissed in my sleep. I kept the place clean and quiet, like I could scrub away anxiety by wiping counters. Darius worked in finance at a firm called Cole Strategic. He dressed like success even when it didn't show up in his accounts. His ties were always perfect. His shoes never had scuffs. He spoke in promises. This quarter, next month, after this deal closes. He chased money the way some men chase applause, hungry for the sound of it. The first year we were married, I believed his hunger was ambition. By year 3, I realized it was emptiness. He didn't want stability. He wanted victory. And when victory didn't come fast enough, he needed someone to blame. That someone was usually me. It started with small cuts. If dinner wasn't right, it was because I didn't think bigger. If rent felt tight, it was because my job was beneath me. If he lost a client, he said it was hard to focus with constant stress at home. He never raised his fist. He raised his voice. He raised the temperature in a room until I apologized just to cool it down. Around year 7, the fights began to circle one topic: money, and the way Darius believed money would finally make him whole. He brought home schemes with shiny names: crypto kiosks, day trading groups, private placements. I kept asking for receipts, for statements, for proof. He kept calling me afraid. On the morning everything changed, We argued over ground beef. I stood in the kitchen, running numbers in my head the way I always did. Rent, utilities, my student loans, the car payment we shouldn't have taken on. Darius stood at the counter scrolling his phone, jaw tight, eyes lit by that familiar fever. "You're really going to nickel and dime us again?" he said, like saving money was an insult. "It's not nickel and diming," I told him. "It's surviving." He laughed without humor. "That's your whole problem, Aaliyah. You think like a clerk. I think like an owner." That was Darius's favorite word. Owner. He used it for stocks, for buildings, for outcomes. Sometimes I wondered if he used it for me. I left for work with his words still stuck under my ribs. The rain had started early, a gray curtain over the city. I remember thinking, as I walked to my car, that I was tired of living like every day was a math problem I could never solve. At lunch, my phone buzzed with a message I almost ignored. "Kit, please confirm you can meet today. Urgent estate matter." It came from a law firm in Inner Harbor. I thought it was spam. I thought it was a mistake. I didn't have an estate. I barely had a savings account. But something in the tone, formal, precise, pulled me in. I asked my supervisor for an extended break, told her it was personal. She looked at the dark circles under my eyes and didn't argue. The firm's office sat above the harbor, glass walls and quiet carpets that swallowed footsteps. The receptionist called me Ms. Carter, like it meant something. She led me into a conference room where the air smelled like polished wood and expensive coffee. That's where I met Malcolm Pierce. He didn't stand when I walked in. He didn't smile. He looked up from a folder and studied me the way a doctor studies a scan, searching for what might be hidden beneath the surface. "Mrs. Carter," he said, voice steady. "Thank you for coming on short notice." "I'm not sure why I'm here," I admitted. "There has to be some mix-up." "There isn't," he said. Then he slid a check across the table. $17 million. The number didn't feel real. The paper looked like every other piece of mail, but my ears rang anyway, like my body recognized gravity when my mind couldn't. My hands hovered over it. I was afraid to touch it, like it might burn. "Who?" I started, and my voice came out thin. "Who would leave this to me?" Malcolm tapped the folder. "Aunt Loretta Banks." The name hit like a half-remembered hymn. My mother's older sister, a woman I hadn't seen since I was 12, after a church argument that split the family like a crack in glass. Loretta was the kind of relative people spoke about in whispers, sharp, private, impossible to please. "She's dead?" I asked. "She passed 3 months ago," Malcolm said. "Her estate was settled quietly. Most of it went into trusts. But there was a direct distribution designated for you." "Why?" I whispered. Malcolm's gaze didn't soften. "Because she watched you. From a distance. She knew where you lived. She knew what you did for work. And she knew about your husband." My stomach tightened. "What about him?" Malcolm didn't blink. "She believed he was an anchor, her words. She didn't leave you money to make you comfortable. She left it to set you free." Free? The word landed like a door opening in a room I didn't know I was trapped in. And the first thought that rose in me, automatic, foolish, was not freedom. It was Darius. I heard myself say it before I could stop. "I have to tell him." Malcolm leaned back. "You don't have to do anything today, except breathe." "This changes everything," I insisted. "He's been stressed. The failures, the pressure. This will fix us." Malcolm's expression held the patience of a man who'd seen too many people confuse money with love. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "money doesn't repair character. It reveals it. And when a fortune appears, misfortune circles it like sharks." I swallowed. "It's mine?" "Clean and liquid," he said. "The taxes were handled before distribution. There are conditions, but not the kind people fear. Your aunt's directive is simple. You maintain control. You do not surrender it." "Control," I repeated, tasting the word. Malcolm slid another envelope toward me. Cream paper, wax seal, cracked from travel. "A letter," he said, From Loretta. I didn't open it in the office. My hands were shaking too hard. I tucked it into my bag like it was fragile evidence. When I stood to leave, Malcolm's voice stopped me. Aaliyah, be careful. I'm not saying your husband will do something illegal. I'm saying you should be aware of how quickly love becomes leverage when money is involved. At the time, I told myself he didn't understand Darius. I told myself my husband's harshness was just stress. I told myself anger was temporary weather. I was wrong. Because by the time I walked back into the rain, Darius had already begun the affair he called work. A husband's workplace affair exposed never starts with lipstick on a collar. It starts with a new name you hear too often, a laugh on speakerphone, a trip that suddenly can't be canceled. A woman who gets him in a way he insists you never will. Her name was Naomi Fields. I didn't know it yet, but she was already in the story. By nightfall, the inheritance fraud investigation would be real, and his fake widow fundraiser scam would already be drafted. And I didn't know the phrase medical power of attorney abuse then. I would soon. The rain didn't start dramatic. It started like a question, soft taps on the windshield, a gray veil over Baltimore, the kind of weather that makes every streetlight look tired. I left Malcolm Pierce's office with $17 million in my bag and a warning in my ears. Not a mystical warning, a practical one. The kind a man gives when he's seen money turn good people into strangers. Be careful, Aaliyah, he'd said. Fortune attracts misfortune. I told myself he was being theatrical. Lawyers talk like that to feel useful. In the elevator down, I pressed my palm against the folder inside my tote, as if paper could pulse. 17 million, clean, liquid, mine. A number big enough to loosen the knots in my chest, big enough to make my arguments with Darius feel like they belonged to another couple, another life. I should have gone home and said nothing. I should have sat on the edge of our bed, stared at the ceiling, and planned. I should have listened to Aunt Loretta's letter before I walked back into my marriage, like a woman carrying gasoline into a house full of candles. But my first instinct was the oldest one I had. Fix it. Fix us. I wanted a symbol, something I could touch that would make the new reality real, something that would bridge the gap between the wife who clipped coupons and the woman who could pay her own way out of any room. So I stopped at a jeweler near the harbor, where the windows were bright and the mannequins wore time-like jewelry. I walked in wearing my frayed coat and my scuffed boots. The clerk's eyes flicked down and back up, polite but dismissive. A signet ring caught my eye. Platinum, heavy, plain, except for a small, deep blue stone set into the face. It looked like a promise you couldn't bend. I'd like that one, I said. The clerk tilted her head. That piece is limited, she said carefully. We have lovely sterling options in. That one, I repeated, and slid the temporary debit card Malcolm had issued me across the counter. Her smile changed instantly. It always does. 10 minutes later, I walked out with a small black box in my bag, the weight of it grounding me. I sat in my car and stared at the rain streaking the windshield, and I thought of Darius's face when he opened it. I imagined the tension easing out of his jaw. I imagined him looking at me like I was not a burden, not an anchor, but a partner. That fantasy lasted until I dialed him. What? He answered. Not hello, not my name. Just that one sharp word, like I had interrupted a man's real life. Darius, I said, forcing brightness, forcing softness. Don't be mad. I have news. I'm in the middle of something, he snapped. If this is about the electric bill, us. It's not, I said quickly. It's good. I'm coming home. I got you something. A pause. Then suspicion slid into his voice. With what money? Just wait, I pleaded. Please! He didn't say he loved me. He didn't say he was glad. He said, don't do anything stupid, and hung up. I should have heard that for what it was. A forecast. I pulled onto I-895, the harbor fading behind me into wet steel and blurred lights. The storm thickened fast, turning the road into a ribbon of uncertainty. Wipers slapped time against the glass. I remember the moment before impact more clearly than the impact itself. It wasn't cinematic. It was ordinary and stupid. My eyes flicking down to the ring box in my bag, my mind playing the scene of his smile. Then motion on my left. A white delivery truck barreled into the intersection like it had forgotten the world had rules. It didn't slow. It didn't hesitate. It slid, hydroplaning, a wall of metal pushed by momentum and rain. I slammed the brakes. The ABS hammered under my foot. The tires skated. My body lifted with fear. The sound came first, an awful crunch, as if the universe had decided to fold my car in half. Glass burst inward. The airbag exploded into my face like a hot fist. My chest seized. My ribs became knives. The ring box launched from my bag and spun in the air, lid popping open. For one strange heartbeat, I watched the ring tumble in slow motion, blue stone flashing like a tiny lighthouse in a gray sea. Then the world tipped and went black. When I woke, the first thing I heard was the beep of a monitor insisting I was still here. The second thing I smelled was antiseptic and stale coffee. Light stabbed my eyes. My tongue felt like sand. My chest hurt in a way that made breathing feel optional. A face hovered over me, an older nurse with silver hair tucked tight, eyes sharp, mouth set in a line that suggested she didn't have time for drama. Her badge read Thompson. "Easy," she said. "Don't try to talk." My throat scraped as I tried anyway. "Water," I croaked. "Ice chips," she corrected. "Pizza," and slipped a cold shard into my mouth, like a small mercy. "You've been out 4 days. Collapsed lung, broken ribs, fractured clavicle, concussion. You got hit hard. 4 days." Panic surged, cold and fast. "Darius?" I rasped. Thompson's eyes shifted just slightly. She set the cup down with a little too much force. "We called your emergency contact," she said. "Multiple times." "And?" My voice shook. "He answered," she said. "He said he was unavailable. He told us to call only if your status changed to final." Final. The word landed heavier than the crash. My stomach rolled. The morphine tried to soften it, but it couldn't. Some truths are too sharp to dull. "Phone," I whispered. Thompson hesitated, then pulled my cracked phone from a drawer. She plugged it in. "It'll hold a charge for a bit," she said. "Don't get worked up." I stared at the screen like it might change if I looked long enough. No missed calls from Darius. No texts. Just one voicemail, time-stamped 3 days ago. I pressed play. "Aaliyah," his voice said, irritated, bored. "Stop having the hospital call me. I'm closing the Apex deal. I can't deal with your drama. If you wreck the car, you figure it out. I'm done carrying you." Click. My hands trembled. A sound escaped me that wasn't quite a sob and wasn't quite a laugh. It was the noise a person makes when she realizes the story she has been telling herself is a lie. Thompson adjusted my IV, her movements efficient. "Men like that don't change," she said, not unkind. "They just find new victims." Before Renee arrived, before Malcolm's folder filled my tray table, I had hours alone with my own thoughts. That was its own kind of torture. Hospitals are full of small sounds that remind you you're not in control. The suction in the wall that sighs, rubber soles squeaking down the hallway, IV pumps alarming because a line kinked. Every beep feels like judgment. Every alarm feels like a warning that your body could betray you again at any second. At night, when the lights dimmed and the floor settled into that half-sleep hospitals live in, I stared at the ceiling tiles and tried to keep my mind from wandering back to the intersection. The way the truck appeared like a decision already made. The brief, impossible beauty of the blue stone flashing as the ring spun through the air. The moment I realized I was about to lose everything I hadn't even gotten to touch. On the second night after I woke, I heard Darius's cadence in the hallway. I turned my head as far as my brace allowed and saw him through the narrow glass, standing near the vending machine, straightening his tie in that warped reflection. He wasn't crying, he wasn't praying, he was rehearsing. That was when Malcolm leaned in and said the words that changed the temperature of my blood. He's not waiting to see if you live. He's waiting to see how quickly he can move if you don't. Malcolm explained it without drama, the way you explain a fire code. He'd handled enough inheritance fraud investigation work to recognize the pattern. First comes the story, then comes the paper, then comes the money. Public narrative, he said. He needs people to believe you're gone, so no one questions why he's handling your accounts. Medical decisions, he continued. DNR orders, power of attorney, anything that gives him control while you can't object. And then, he said, a series of reasonable actions that look like a grieving husband doing the responsible thing. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say he didn't know Darius, that Darius was stressed, but not evil. Those were the defenses I'd used for years, like a blanket over a fire. But lying there, unable to lift my own body, I felt how useless they were. Malcolm told me Loretta Banks had left safeguards, identity checks for early transfer, counsel on record, limits on who could initiate filings. Not sentimental, strategic. She knew someone would try, he said. She just didn't know it would be him. Then he showed me what Darius had been typing into our shared laptop through the keylogger's mirror. Intersection fatality rates, rain hydroplaning statistics, how long until life insurance pays, how to expedite a death certificate. The terms were clinical, almost boring, until you remembered they were typed by the man who slept beside me. My mouth went dry. He was shopping for my death, I whispered. Renee said later, when she came and saw the same printouts, that's not a husband, that's a manager. And managers leave trails, Malcolm reminded us, because they think systems belong to them. Once my voice came back, even raw and thin, Malcolm pushed me to document everything. Dates, calls, the voicemail, the absence, the attempted DNR. He wanted a record that didn't depend on my emotion, because men like Darius try to turn a woman's pain into hysteria the moment it threatens them. Renee built a timeline so detailed it made my skin crawl. Company events, tagged photos, trips, a hotel balcony shot with Darius's hand at Naomi's waist like ownership. A comment thread where someone joked, "New power couple?" And Darius replied with a laughing emoji, as if my marriage was just an old outfit. There, Renee said, tapping the screen. Husband's workplace affair exposed. Not because we're being petty, because he's using it as cover. He's grieving publicly while moving paper privately. I stared at Naomi's smile in one photo, bright, genuine, the smile of a young woman who still believed in a clean love story. It broke something in me. I need to know if she's mine, I whispered. We'll get the DNA test, Renee promised, then paused. But first, we have to get her to look at him differently. People don't consent to a reunion twist when they're still inside the lie. DNA test reunion twist. The phrase sounded too dramatic for the quiet horror of a hospital room, but it was accurate. Bloodlines turning a simple affair into something sick. Malcolm agreed we needed to approach Naomi carefully. He drafted a message that wouldn't sound like an attack and might slip past Darius if he was monitoring phones. No accusations, no threats, just a crack in the story. You don't know me, but I'm alive. Ask yourself why he told you otherwise. If you want the truth, come alone. Renee wanted to add, he's using you, run. Malcolm stopped her. If she feels attacked, she'll defend him, he said. Let her discover the lie herself. That's what breaks spells. And in the quiet hours between medication and nurse checks, I stared at the ceiling and tried to imagine Naomi reading that message. Confusion first, then fear, then the first thin slice of doubt. I held on to that slice like it was oxygen. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe without breaking. The next 2 days were quiet in the way hospitals are quiet. Busy under the surface, still on top. Nurses came and went. Doctors spoke in measured tones. Pain moved through my body like weather. Darius stayed absent. On the 3rd day after I woke, the door flew open, and Renee Lawson rushed in, drenched from rain, eyes red-rimmed, hair frizzed at the edges. She didn't walk. She stormed. When she saw me, she stopped hard, as if the sight of me had punched the air out of her. Then she crossed the room and grabbed my hand, careful of the tubes. "You're alive," she whispered. "Oh my God, you're alive." "Apparently," I rasped. "Why are you looking at me like I'm a ghost?" Renee pulled back, and rage climbed across her face like fire. "Because Darius buried you," she said. My stomach dropped. "What?" She fumbled for her phone and shoved it toward me. "Look." Facebook. Darius's profile. My photo in black and white, the one I hated, the one where I looked exhausted and thin. Under it, a caption that made my vision blur. "My heart is shattered. My beloved Aaliyah lost her battle after a tragic accident. Please respect my privacy as I navigate this devastating chapter." Memorial details to follow. The comments were a flood. Hearts, prayers, people praising him for being strong, people calling me troubled, as if my death had been a relief they could politely mourn. Renee swiped again. A fundraiser link. A smiling thumbnail of Darius, solemn in a suit, hands folded like a man who knew how to look wounded on command. Help Darius Cole cover funeral and medical expenses. "How much?" I whispered, throat tightening. Renee's jaw clenched. 28,000, she said. "In 2 days. And he's still adding updates." I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. "He thinks I'm going to die," I said softly. Renee's voice turned sharp. "Or he wishes you would," she corrected. "And there's more." She swiped to another photo. Our living room. Darius on the couch, black shirt, grief arranged on his face like a tie. And beside him, a young woman with green eyes and a hand resting possessively on his shoulder, Naomi Fields. I felt my body go cold in a way the hospital thermostat couldn't explain. She was beautiful in a clean, modern way, like she belonged in an office lobby. But it wasn't jealousy that hit me. It was recognition. Her chin, the shape of it, the stubborn curve I'd seen in old family photos. Her habit, tucking hair behind her ear with 2 fingers, the same nervous motion I used to do before I learned to keep my hands still. "She looks like you," Renee whispered, as if reading my mind. "Like a younger version." "It's not just that," I said, and my voice shook. "She has my father's chin." Renee's mouth fell open. "Aaliyah!" I stared at Naomi's eyes until memory rose like a bruise. 99. Snow outside a hospital window in Wisconsin. My 18-year-old hands shaking as I held a newborn and tried to convince myself I could be brave enough to let go. A social worker's clipboard. A closed adoption. A promise I made in silence. "I will never forget you." "How old is she?" I asked, though I already knew. 26, Renee said, voice low. "She's a junior analyst at his firm. They've been tagged together for months." 26. My chest tightened until breathing hurt more than broken ribs. Renee leaned closer. "Talk to me," she said gently. I swallowed hard. "When I was 18, I whispered, "I had a baby. I never told anyone. My parents sent me away. I gave birth. I held her for an hour. And then, she was adopted." Renee's eyes filled. "Oh, baby," she breathed. I kept my gaze on Naomi's face. "If she's mine," I whispered, "then Darius isn't just cheating." Renee's voice turned hoarse with fury. "He's sick," she said. A knock sounded. Malcolm Pierce stepped in, his suit jacket damp from rain, his expression carved out of focus. He looked at me, then at Renee's phone, and his jaw tightened. "He posted," he said. Not a question, a confirmation. "He's fundraising," Renee spat. Malcolm nodded. "We're documenting it," he said. "Screenshots, timestamps, donations, the language. That's evidence." He moved closer to my bed, lowering his voice. "Mrs. Carter," he said, using the formal name like armor. "Your husband came to my satellite office yesterday morning." My stomach dropped. "He did what?" "He presented a death certificate," Malcolm said calmly. A forged one. He claimed you died at the scene. I stared at him. I'm right here. A forgery, Malcolm said. A good one. He wanted to initiate transfer immediately. Renee's eyes widened. How did he know about the inheritance? She demanded. Malcolm's gaze sharpened. Keylogger, he said. On your laptop. He's been monitoring your email. He saw our initial correspondence 3 weeks ago. He knew the money was coming before you did. I felt nausea rise. My laptop, my home, my private thoughts, all of it turned into a pipeline to him. He waited, I whispered. He waited for it. Malcolm nodded once. And when the accident happened, he said carefully, he moved fast. But the crash, Renee started. The police report says the truck ran the light, Malcolm said. I'm not calling it an engineered hit without proof, but I'm calling it convenient. My hands shook. So what's he doing now? I asked. Malcolm opened his folder and slid a copy of a filed document onto my tray table. He filed a declaration claiming your aunt's estate is insolvent, he said. He submitted forged documents alleging liabilities, lawsuits, unpaid taxes, gambling debts, $20 million in debt. Renee scoffed. Why would he claim debt if he wants the money? Because he's hedging, Malcolm said. If she dies, he pushes for spousal transfer. If she lives, he frightens her into signing control to him so he can absorb the debt. That's how inheritance fraud works when the thief wants you to thank him. I stared at the paper, at the neat lies printed in legal language. He thinks I'm stupid, I whispered. He thinks you're loyal, Malcolm corrected. He thinks you'll choose peace over clarity. Renee's voice sharpened. Not anymore. Malcolm's gaze held mine. We need to protect you medically and legally, he said. First, revoke his power of attorney. Second, restrict his access. Third, lock down the estate path. Fourth, build proof. And Naomi? I asked, the word tasting like both grief and hope. Malcolm's eyes narrowed. If your suspicion is correct, he said quietly, this becomes more than cheating. This becomes exploitation, coercion, and potentially fraud involving next of kin. Renee's hands clenched. We have to reach her. Yes, Malcolm said, but carefully, because if she's under his influence, she may run back to him if we come too hard. I stared at Naomi's face again, my daughter's face maybe, and felt something crack open inside me, something old and tender and furious. I have to meet her, I whispered. Malcolm nodded. We'll get there, he said, but first we need you stable. Stable. The word sounded like a mountain from where I lay. They moved me out of the ICU 2 days later into a step-down unit where the rooms were smaller and the hallways less guarded. My fractures were healing, but my body still felt like it belonged to someone else. Pain lived in my ribs and collarbone like a resident who refused to leave. Nurse Thompson worked most nights on that floor too. She checked my vitals with brisk precision and watched my visitors like she was measuring threat levels. You're awake, she said one night as she adjusted my drip. That means you're competent. I am, I rasped. Then say it to your doctor, she said. Tell them you revoke your husband's medical power of attorney. Get it documented. Paper is where men like him hide. Her bluntness steadied me. He already tried to push a DNR, I whispered. Thompson's eyes narrowed. That's medical power of attorney abuse, she said. And it's not rare. You're not the first woman to wake up and realize her husband has been making decisions like she's already dead. I swallowed hard. What do I do? You breathe, she said, and you get cold. I frowned. Cold? Anger burns fast, she said. Cold lasts. Cold is how you survive a man who thinks he can outweight you. Her words felt like a lesson my aunt would have approved of. The next morning, Malcolm arrived with forms. Dr. Klein, my attending, documented my competency after asking simple questions. My name, the date, where I was, what happened, who the president was. I answered without hesitation. Dr. Klein signed the notes. Malcolm filed the emergency paperwork. The hospital updated my chart. Darius Cole's authority over my body was revoked. That afternoon, the hospital's security supervisor stopped by to explain the new restrictions. He spoke in neutral language: visitor policy, patient safety, escalation procedures. But I heard what it really meant. My room had become a controlled perimeter. If Darius appeared, he wouldn't be allowed to hover and charm his way past a desk. He would be stopped, documented, watched. It wasn't comfort, it was strategy. And it gave me enough space to do the hardest work, to sit with the truth without rushing to soften it. Each time the pain spiked, I practiced Thompson's breathing counts: 4 in, hold, 4 out, until my fear stopped driving the wheel. Calm didn't arrive like a gift, it arrived like a skill. I watched the fundraiser meter climb on Renee's screen and felt something in me harden. Sympathy was being converted into cash. My name was being used like a password. I would change that today. Renee set up a war room on her laptop. She pulled public records. She mapped Darius's timeline. She saved every post, every comment, every fundraiser update. "He's writing your story for the public," she said, eyes hard. "He's been hinting for a year that you're unstable. He's laying groundwork so when he buries you, people clap." She showed me posts where Darius had described himself as carrying a spouse through hard seasons, vague enough to sound noble, cruel enough to paint me as the problem. "He's prepping the jury," Renee muttered. Malcolm nodded. "That helps us," he said. "It shows pattern, narrative manipulation, and it shows motive." "Motive is money," I whispered. "Motive is control," Malcolm corrected. "Money is the tool." Renee clicked open a file and turned the screen toward me. "I found her parents," she said quietly. "Adoptive. Matthew and Deborah Fields. Naomi was adopted as an infant. Closed record." "Fields." My throat tightened. "So it's possible," I whispered. "It's more than possible," Renee said, voice thick. "It matches." Malcolm leaned in. "We can't confirm without consent or court order," he said. "But we can prepare. If she agrees, we do a DNA test. If she doesn't, we build enough for the court to compel it." "Consent is better," Renee said. "Yes," Malcolm agreed. "And consent requires trust." Trust? That was the part Darius had stolen from me long ago. But maybe Naomi still had some left to reclaim. I stared at Naomi's photo. "I remember something," I said suddenly. Renee looked up. Malcolm's eyes sharpened. "A birthmark," I whispered. "Strawberry-shaped, left shoulder blade. The nurses called it an angel's kiss." Renee swallowed. "If she has it," she began. "Then she's mine," I finished, and my voice broke. Malcolm's tone stayed steady, but his eyes softened slightly. "That detail could open a door," he said. "Not as proof, but as a key." A key? I understood what he meant. A secret that only a mother would know. A detail that could shake Naomi's certainty about who Darius was and what he'd told her. That night, when the floor quieted, I finally opened Aunt Loretta's letter. I had been afraid of it, afraid it would make me feel too much when I needed to think. But Loretta didn't write to soothe. She wrote to sharpen. She told me she'd watched from a distance. She told me I was smarter than the life I'd accepted. She told me control was clarity, not cruelty. And she wrote one line that lodged in my chest like a pebble you can't cough out. "Men like him do not fear your tears. They fear your calm." When I finished, I didn't feel comforted. I felt instructed. The next day, I asked the physical therapist to push me harder. "You're motivated," he said with a grin, helping me sit up. "I'm hunted," I corrected, and his smile faded into concern. Walking again hurt like punishment. My ribs protested. My collarbone burned. My lungs fought for full expansion. But every step I took on the hospital floor felt like reclaiming a square inch of my life. Nurse Thompson watched me in the hallway, arms crossed, eyes measuring my breathing. "Don't rush," she said when I wobbled. "Fast isn't strong. Steady is strong." I nodded, sweat stinging my eyes. "He's moving," I whispered. "He's not going to wait." Thompson's mouth tightened. "Then you become the thing he can't predict," she said. "You become calm." On day 10, Renee walked into my room with her phone buzzing like a hornet nest. "He read my message," she said. My stomach tightened. "You messaged him?" "No," Renee said. "I messaged Naomi." My heart lurched. "What did you say?" Renee's eyes held mine. "I said you're alive," she said simply. And I said she should ask herself why Darius told her otherwise. Malcolm, who had just stepped in behind her, froze. "Renee?" he said sharply. "I know," Renee snapped. "We have to be careful, but we're running out of time." I didn't scold her. I couldn't, because a part of me was grateful. A part of me wanted the truth to hit Naomi like cold water, to wake her from whatever story Darius had wrapped around her. Renee turned her phone toward me. Naomi hadn't responded, but she had read it. The little scene stamp sat there like a held breath. "She'll come," I whispered. Malcolm exhaled slowly. "If she comes," he said, "we must control the environment. We must have witnesses. We must record." Renee nodded. "I've got cloud backup," she said. "Multiple devices." Malcolm's eyes narrowed. "Good," he said, "because if Darius suspects recording, he'll destroy it." I stared at the bed rail, at the smooth plastic, imagining tape and hidden microphones. My heart beat harder. "We need him to talk," Malcolm continued. "We need him to admit he knew about the inheritance, that he filed, that he attempted to manipulate medical decisions. We need his mouth to do what paper can't." "How do we get him in here?" I asked. Renee's smile was thin and dangerous. "I already did," she said. She held up her phone. A text thread with Darius, from my number. "Aaliyah, I'm awake. I remember everything. I need to talk. Read." No reply yet. But she knew him. Silence wasn't calm. Silence was calculation. "He'll come," Renee said. "He has to see if his narrative is broken." Malcolm's jaw tightened. "Then we set the trap," he said. He went into the bathroom and returned with a small recorder, no bigger than a pack of gum. He handed it to Renee, who taped it under the bed rail, where it couldn't be seen from the doorway. "I'll stay hidden," Malcolm said. "I'm not the bait. You are." I nodded, my mouth dry. "What do I do?" "Let him talk," Malcolm said. "Ask questions that sound like you're confused. Make him explain. People like him can't resist explaining. It's how they feel powerful." Renee adjusted my pillow, smoothed my hair back, dabbed lip balm on my mouth. "You look alive," she whispered. "I am alive," I said. "Good," she replied. "Make him regret forgetting that." My hands trembled, and not just from injury. A tremor of fear ran through me, old and familiar. The fear of a fight I couldn't win in my own home. Nurse Thompson stepped in with medication, saw the tape under the bed rail, and lifted an eyebrow. "We're expecting visitors," Renee said. Thompson's gaze flicked to me. "Then here's your advice," she said. "If he comes in sweet, don't believe it. If he comes in angry, don't flinch. Either way, keep him talking." She set the meds down and leaned close. "And breathe," she added. "Breathe like you own your body." Then she left, shutting the door softly behind her, as if sealing us in with our plan. The hallway grew quieter as visiting hours began. My heart hammered against my bruised ribs. I could taste adrenaline, sharp and metallic. I practiced calm. I practiced Loretta's line. "Men like him fear your calm." The door opened. Darius Cole walked in carrying a briefcase. No flowers, no apology. Paper. His suit was charcoal, his tie silk, his shoes polished. He looked like he was stepping into a negotiation, not a hospital room where his wife lay broken. He stopped at the foot of my bed and stared at me for one long, silent second. His face went blank, pure calculation, like he was updating a spreadsheet in his head. Then he rearranged his features into relief. "Aaliyah," he breathed. "Baby, you're awake." His voice had the softness he used in public, the softness that made strangers think he was good. I kept my face neutral. "I'm awake," I rasped. He glanced at Renee, irritation flickering. "Renee," he said, polite. "Thank you for being here." Renee's smile was razor thin. "I'm here because you weren't," she said. Darius ignored the sting and turned back to me, stepping closer. He didn't touch my hand. He hovered near it, as if intimacy was something he could imply without earning. "I've been calling every day," he said. I let silence hang for a beat. "Nurse Thompson said you told them to call, only if I was final," I whispered. His eyes flashed, then softened again. "Miscommunication," he said. "Hospitals mix messages. You know how it is." I stared at him. "You posted I was dead." Darius exhaled like he was wounded. "They told me your injuries were catastrophic," he said. "I was preparing myself." Preparing. He said it like a virtue. Renee leaned forward. "You were fundraising," she snapped. Darius's jaw clenched. He looked at Renee with controlled irritation, then turned back to me, voice dropping into gentleness again. "Aaliyah," he said, "I've been dealing with everything, the apartment, the insurance, the calls, and the estate." My pulse jumped. He said estate like a man tasting sugar. "What estate?" I asked softly, playing dumb. Darius watched my face closely, measuring. Then he smiled like I was simple. "Your aunt's," he said. "Loretta Banks. The inheritance." There. The confirmation. He knew before I told him. "How do you know?" I whispered. "Because I'm your husband," he said. "I handle things. I protect you." He set his briefcase on the tray table and clicked the latches. The sound snapped in the quiet room. He pulled out documents, neatly tabbed. He slid one toward me. "Aaliyah," he said, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. "It's a disaster. Debt, claims, creditors. They'll come after you. After us." My throat tightened. "Debt?" I whispered. He nodded quickly. 20 million, maybe more," he said. "But I can fix it." Fix. The hook. "I have a structure," he continued, tapping the page. "A holding company. You sign the estate over to it. I control it. I absorb the liability. I take the hit for you, because I love you." Renee let out a short, bitter laugh. "You take the money," she said. Darius's eyes flashed. "Stay out of this," he snapped, and for a second the mask slipped, revealing the anger underneath. Then he caught himself, smoothed his tie, softened his voice. "Marriage is sacrifice," he said to me, producing a gold pen. "Let me sacrifice for you." He placed the pen into my trembling hand and pointed to the signature line. "Just sign," he murmured. My fingers closed around the pen. My heart hammered. The recorder under the bed rail captured the hush of the room, the sound of his breath, the small cruelty in his patience. I looked up at him. "Why would you take on 20 million in debt for me?" I whispered. His smile turned colder. "Because you can't handle it," he said. "And I can." There it was. Not love. Contempt. Renee's phone, tucked in her cardigan pocket, recorded everything too. I let my eyes fill with tears I didn't fully feel. I let my voice tremble. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Darius's expression softened with satisfaction. He thought my confusion was victory. "I didn't want to stress you," he said. "You've been fragile." Fragile, the word he'd been planting online. I nodded slowly, pretending to accept it. "So you've been handling it," I whispered. "Yes," he said quickly. Everything. Calls. Meetings. Paperwork. Work trips, Renee muttered, barely audible. Darius's head snapped toward her. Enough! He hissed. And then the door opened again. Naomi Fields stepped into my room, holding a tablet and a small notary case. She hesitated in the doorway, eyes scanning like she wasn't sure what she was walking into. But the moment her gaze met mine, her face changed. Not recognition, not yet. A pull, like a magnet finding metal. Darius didn't notice. He was too busy arranging his papers like a man setting a table for a meal. Naomi, he said briskly, not looking up. Perfect. We're ready. Naomi stepped closer, her eyes still locked on me. She tucked her hair behind her ear with 2 fingers. My breath caught. Darius pointed to the paper. She signs, he said. You notarize. Simple. Naomi swallowed. You said, she began, voice shaky. Darius's eyes narrowed. I said what? You said she didn't make it, Naomi said, and the words came out like she couldn't stop them. The air thickened. Darius's jaw flexed. Naomi? He warned. You posted it, Naomi said, louder now. You told me she was dead. You told me that's why we had to move fast. Renee's mouth fell open. My heart slammed against my ribs. Darius's mask cracked. I said she might not make it, he snapped. Don't get emotional. Naomi stared at him, betrayal rising. Then why am I here with a notary seal? She demanded. Why are you trying to make her sign? Darius turned toward me, eyes hard. Aaliyah, he hissed, dropping the softness. Tell her to focus. Tell her you're confused. Tell her this is stress. I didn't look at him. I looked at Naomi, and I felt grief and rage twist together into something sharper than either. Naomi, I whispered, voice thin but steady. How old are you? She blinked. 26, she said. My throat tightened. Were you adopted? I asked quietly. Darius stepped closer to my bed, anger vibrating. Stop, he hissed. Naomi's eyes widened. What? She whispered. I forced a slow breath. Calm, blade. February 14th, 1999, I said softly. St. Jude's Hospital in Madison. It was snowing. Naomi froze. Darius laughed harshly. She's delirious, he snapped. Ignore her. I kept my gaze on Naomi. You were born at 3:12 a.m., I continued, voice shaking. You had a strawberry-shaped birthmark on your left shoulder blade. The nurses called it an angel's kiss. Naomi's hand flew to her shoulder. Renee covered her mouth. Darius's face went pale. Naomi whispered, My mother, Deborah, calls it that. The room went silent except for the beep of my monitor, quickening with my pulse. Darius recovered first, panic sharpening into anger. This is manipulation, he snapped, stepping toward Naomi. Give me your phone, now! Naomi clutched it tighter, eyes wide. Darius's voice dropped low, dangerous. Don't be stupid, he said. You don't know these people. These people? Renee hissed. Naomi backed away, trembling. She looked at me like she was seeing a ghost. She looked at Darius like she was seeing a stranger. And then she lifted her phone slightly, as if remembering why she'd brought it. Her screen glowed. A small red dot pulsed at the top. Recording. Naomi's voice shook, but it held. I've been recording since I walked in, she whispered. Naomi's voice shook, but it held. I've been recording since I walked in, she whispered. For a second, Darius didn't move. His eyes locked on that tiny red dot like it was a warning light. Then he surged forward. Give me that. He reached for her phone. Naomi flinched back, shoulders brushing the wall. Don't touch me, she said, louder now. Darius laughed once, sharp and humorless. You think you're brave? You're an analyst with a cute resume. I can erase you in a week. You already tried to erase her, Naomi shot back, pointing at me. You buried her while she was breathing. I forced air into my lungs. Calm, blade. Darius turned on me, eyes bright with rage. You planned this, he spat. You and your little friend, and your lawyer. Renee's chin lifted. You planned it first. We're just finishing it. Darius's gaze flicked to the bed rail. He noticed the tape. His pupils tightened. No! He lunged. His hand tore under the rail, ripping out the recorder like he was yanking out a tooth. Plastic cracked, and the device dropped. He stomped hard, twice. The casing shattered. There! He panted, straightening, smoothing his tie with shaking hands. He smiled, wild and triumphant. No proof, just a brain-injured wife and a confused girl. Naomi's mouth opened. I'm not your girl, she whispered. Darius rounded on her, voice lowering into private poison. You are whatever I say you are, he hissed. Hand me that phone. Naomi tightened her grip. It's in the cloud, she said. Darius froze. His face shifted, calculation returning, the mask rebuilding itself. Naomi, he said, suddenly gentle. You're scared. Give me the phone and we'll talk. We'll fix this quietly. Fix. Always fix. Always quietly. Naomi shook her head, tears spilling. You told me my birth mother was dead, she said. You used that to make me do paperwork. Darius's jaw flexed. Business is business, he snapped. If she died without a will, the money goes to the child. I needed control of the child. The words hung in the air like smoke. My stomach went cold. Say that again, I whispered. Darius realized too late he'd spoken. His eyes darted to the door. He tried to pivot. What I mean is... he began. No, Naomi said, voice rising. You mean exactly what you said. Darius's hand shot out again. Step away from her. The voice came from my bathroom, deep and flat as a closing vault. Malcolm Pierce stepped out, not holding papers now, but holding a device shaped like certainty. He didn't wave it, he held it low, ready. Behind him, 2 uniformed officers waited in the hall, Darius's confidence drained in real time. He swallowed. This is ridiculous, he said, scrambling for his tone. She's medicated, she's confused. Malcolm didn't blink. You've been under an inheritance fraud investigation since you walked into my office with a forged death certificate, he said. Darius's eyes flashed. Alleged. Malcolm lifted his phone. Not alleged. Your fundraiser posts, your filings, your keylogger, your attempted DNR update. Medical power of attorney abuse is not a misunderstanding. Darius's gaze snapped to me, suddenly pleading. Aaliyah, he said, soft and urgent. Don't let them do this. I did it for us. I looked at him and felt something like relief, not because it was easy, but because it was clear. You did it for access, I said. Renee leaned toward Naomi. Do you still have it? She whispered. Naomi nodded, lifting her phone. The red dot still pulsed. And it auto-uploaded, she said. Every minute. Darius lunged again, desperate now. The officers moved fast. One grabbed his arm, spun him, pinned him. The other snapped cuffs onto his wrists with a clean metallic click. Darius twisted, face red. You can't arrest me, he shouted. I'm her husband. I have rights. You had authority, Malcolm said evenly. You abused it. Darius whipped his head toward Naomi. You ungrateful... Naomi's voice cut through him, shaking but firm. Don't speak to me like you own me. I'm not your asset. As they dragged him toward the door, Darius craned his neck back, eyes locked on me. You'll regret this, he hissed. You don't know how to live without me. I met his gaze. Watch me. The door closed. The room fell quiet, and my monitor slowed, as if my body had been waiting. Naomi stood frozen, chest heaving, phone still in her hand. Her eyes found mine, and for a moment she looked 14, not 26. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I believe you, I said. Because he only tells the truth by accident, Renee wiped her face. You're safe, she told Naomi. He can't touch you now. Naomi shook her head. My whole life, my parents, my name, this. She gestured between me and the broken recorder on the floor. How do I even know who I am? Malcolm's voice softened just slightly. One step at a time, he said. First, we preserve your recording. Then we freeze the estate and the fundraiser proceeds. Then we correct the public record. He already wrote my obituary, I said. And we rewrite it, Renee answered. Malcolm set a chair beside the bed and opened his tablet. Naomi, you're going to email me that file tonight, right now, he said. And you'll forward the original message threads with Darius. Every work trip, every instruction, every line where he tells you what to say. Naomi nodded, wiping her cheeks. He made me sign non-disclosure paperwork, she whispered. He said it was standard. It's standard when someone plans to lie, Malcolm said. Your cooperation turns that NDA into confetti. Renee tapped her screen again. And we're going to post proof you're alive, she added. A video, timestamp, doctor's confirmation. No drama, just facts. Let the fake widow fundraiser scam collapse under daylight. A knock sounded, and Nurse Thompson stepped in, took one look at Naomi's shaking hands, and softened in a way I hadn't seen before. You did good, honey, she told Naomi. Then she glanced at me. And you? Keep breathing like you own the room, because now you do. Malcolm's eyes returned to Naomi. About the birthmark, he said gently. If you're willing, we can do the DNA test reunion twist the right way. Consent. Chain of custody. Admissible results. Not just for feelings, for court. Naomi's eyes filled again. If that date, if that mark, I'd to me. Gay, she began, then stopped, terrified of wanting it. I reached out with my good hand. It shook, but it was mine. We don't have to rush the word mother, I said. We can start with truth. Naomi's fingers slid into mine. Warm, real. Outside, the hall carried the distant fade of Darius's voice, still trying to sell his story. But in my room, the air felt cleaner, like a storm had finally passed. Malcolm packed his folder. This isn't over, he warned. He'll claim you're incompetent. He'll call the affair a misunderstanding. He'll say the fundraiser was for expenses. Let him, Renee said. We've got receipts. Naomi lifted her phone again, as if to remind herself it existed. And we've got audio, she said. I looked at the shattered recorder and felt a grim satisfaction. Darius had been so focused on destroying my trap that he missed the one standing beside him. He didn't understand women who document. He didn't understand that the cloud doesn't bruise when you hit it. Pain still lived in my bones. Fear still hovered at the edges. But something else had moved in, steady and bright. Control. Malcolm met my eyes. When you're ready, he said, we'll talk about your next steps, your protections, your future. I thought of Loretta's line. Men like him fear your calm. I held Naomi's hand tighter. I'm ready, I said. 3 months later, Baltimore wore winter like a warning. Gray water, sharp wind, and a sky that refused to brighten. I stood at Miller's Crossing, watching cars slide through the intersection that had tried to erase me. The light turned green. Traffic flowed. Naomi stood beside me, hands deep in her pockets, hair snapping in the wind. Renee was on my other side with a paper cup of coffee and that new habit of scanning every face, like safety was something you built with attention. Still sure? Naomi asked, nodding at the sapling lying on a tarp. Crabapple, I said. Tough roots. It survives bad soil. Naomi's mouth lifted. Feels accurate. We didn't come here to be sentimental. We came here to mark an ending and plant something that didn't lie. In my tote bag was a sealed evidence envelope the police returned after the wreck. Inside it, the crushed platinum signet ring I'd bought the day I got the inheritance. I'd imagined Darius opening that box and finally seeing me. Instead, the ring flew through rain and glass and came back bent. The blue stone missing. Darius's downfall didn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happened in steps, the way fraud always does, paper by paper, click by click, until the weight of it crushed the man who thought he was untouchable. Malcolm Pierce called it the arrogance tax. First, the fake widow fundraiser scam collapsed when Renee posted a short video of me alive, time-stamped, filmed under hospital lights. No sobbing, no speech, just my face and Dr. Klein's calm confirmation that I was competent and my husband no longer had authority. Donations froze within an hour. By the next morning, the platform locked the fundraiser, and Darius's grieving widower mask started to slip. Second, Naomi's recording didn't just survive, it multiplied. She'd set her phone to auto-upload, and Malcolm subpoenaed the cloud files with a chain of custody so clean it could have been surgical. The audio caught Darius admitting the inheritance fraud investigation details in his own voice, the forged death certificate, the rush to file, the plan to control the child. Malcolm paired that with hospital notes showing an attempted DNR update and the paper trail of medical power of attorney abuse. Darius's defense tried the oldest trick. He claimed I was confused. He claimed Naomi was a bitter mistress. He claimed Renee was meddling. He tried to frame the husband's workplace affair exposed angle as private, as if adultery could swallow fraud whole. Malcolm didn't argue feelings. He argued facts. He played Darius's voicemail, cold, annoyed, more concerned about a deal than my breath, and asked the court why a loving spouse would only want calls when she was final. Darius couldn't answer that. He could only glare. The judge granted a protective order, confirmed the revocation of his authority, and froze the estate channels he'd tried to pry open. The prosecutor offered a plea if Darius returned the fundraiser money and surrendered the devices used for the keylogger. He refused at first, because pride is an addiction. But when forensics found the keylogger and drafts announcing my passing, the plea stopped being mercy and became math. He took it. When Malcolm texted me the final terms, felony fraud on record, restitution, supervised probation, and a permanent restraining order, I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. Naomi and I did the DNA test reunion twist 2 weeks later. Not because we needed proof to believe our own eyes, but because truth should not have to hide behind rumor. The results came back crisp and undeniable. Parent-child match. Naomi didn't cry when she read it. She sat very still, then looked up and said, "So I wasn't crazy for feeling pulled." "No," I told her. "You were human." We moved slow after that. Some days she wanted answers I didn't have. Some days I wanted to apologize for choices I made at 18, with fear in my hands. We agreed on one thing. Darius didn't get to be the center of our connection. He was the storm we survived, not the home we built. Loretta Banks's money sat in accounts Malcolm guarded like a vault, but it wasn't the number that changed my life. It was the control. I paid off my debts. I bought a modest townhouse with a porch that caught morning light. Then I used a portion to start a small fund for women trapped in financial coercion. Free legal consults, emergency housing deposits, and classes on protecting identity, passwords, and medical access. If paperwork had been used to cage me, I wanted other women to learn how to unlock doors. Naomi enrolled in night law school. She said evidence made sense to her now. She said she wanted to be the person who stands in the shadows and stops the next Darius before he signs another lie. At Miller's Crossing, Naomi and I dug the hole together. The ground was stiff with cold, but our shovels hit the soil with steady rhythm. When the hole was deep enough, I opened the evidence envelope and let the crushed ring slide into my palm. Naomi watched it for a long beat. "How much was it?" she asked softly. $32,000, I said. She shook her head. "That's insane." "It was cheap," I replied, "for learning what love isn't." I dropped the ring into the bottom of the hole. We lowered the sapling in, packed the dirt, and pressed it down with our boots. The wind tugged at the thin branches, testing them. It didn't matter. Roots don't announce themselves. They just hold. Renee lifted her coffee in a small toast. "To surviving," she said. "To being calm," I added, hearing Loretta's voice in my head. Naomi linked her arm through mine, And for the first time, it didn't feel like I was borrowing a future. It felt like I was choosing one. If this story hit you in a place you don't talk about much, remember this. Paperwork can be weaponized, but it can also be armor. Pay attention, ask questions, keep copies, trust the quiet voice in your chest when something feels off. If you've been called paranoid, remember, intuition is data your heart collects quietly. And if you're still here with me, drop a like so this reaches someone who needs it. Subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Comment where you're watching from, or what time it is for you right now. Then tap the end screen and keep going with me.